everybody? Welcome to another episode of Drafters TV. I'm Ben Hauver, and today we're going to be taking a look at the top 5 tournament stacks for DFS in Week 7 of the NFL. If you guys wouldn't mind, drop a like on this video, and if you're feeling especially generous, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to hit that 500 sub benchmark as soon as we possibly can, and I truly do appreciate each and every sub. Speaking of subscribing, if you guys would like a chance to win a free ticket into a drafters contest of your choice worth up to $5.50, whether that be a cash game or taking a shot at one of their many GPPs, all you have to do is 1, subscribe to the channel, and then 2, pop over to Twitter and retweet Drafters' most recent tweet and reply with your Drafters username. And that's it. You'll be entered into the giveaway, and I will announce the winner on next week's video. The winner of last week's video, I've got everybody who followed the steps last week's name opened up in a randomizer. Going to click that right now. And it is going to be Jarosol. Or no, I'm sorry. Yeah, Jarosol. Jasorol. Got it. Took me 3 times to pronounce that, but I am a professional. Jasorol, make sure you DM Drafters and they will hook you up with that. Now let's get right in to the top 5 stacks for DFS tournaments in Week 7. My number 1 stack this week is going to be Kyler Murray to DeAndre Hopkins, and I really don't see any way that this stack fails. The Seahawks are far and away the worst team in the league when it comes to limiting production from opposing wide receivers, and while DeAndre Hopkins did struggle in a similarly phenomenal spot last week against Dallas, that was in large part due to game script. The Cardinals were well in control of that game from start to finish, and the Andy Dalton-led Cowboys offense was just simply unable to put any pressure on Arizona. Kyler Murray attempted under 30 passes for the first time in 2020, and I just don't see that happening this week against Russell Wilson. The Seahawks offense should be in excellent position to force a shootout this week. Kyler Murray, in my opinion, is the best quarterback play of Week 7 straight up. Seattle is allowing the 6th most rushing yards to quarterback per game, 3rd most rushing touchdowns to quarterback per game, and the 2nd most fantasy points to quarterbacks per game. He's averaging 8.5 rush attempts per game. That pace over 16 games is 136 attempts for 986 yards. He has 6 rushing touchdowns through 6 games, at least 1 rushing touchdown in 5 out of his 6 games. I already mentioned the matchup for Hopkins, but if he sees 10 plus targets in this spot, which is something that I would describe as more likely than possible, this stack could become a must-own in all formats for Week 7 if you have any shot of taking down a tournament. My second favorite stack this week comes from the other side of the ball in the same game, and it's going to be Russell Wilson to DK Metcalf. Russell Wilson appears destined to become the 2020 MVP of the NFL, and that is an award that he would fully deserve if he's able to maintain the level of play that he's demonstrated through 5 weeks of the season. Fresh off of a Week 6 bye, the Seahawks offense should be well rested and well schemed against an opponent that only has 6 days of preparation. Wilson has thrown for 3 or more touchdowns in 4 out of his 5 games this year, 4 or more touchdowns in 3 out of his games this year. And while on paper, it looks like Arizona has held quarterbacks in check in terms of fantasy production, you can contextualize those stats when you realize that Arizona has faced just terrible quarterbacks, guys like Joe Flacco, Dwayne Haskins, Andy Dalton, Jimmy G, to name a few. Wilson is at the peak of his powers right now. He is fully matchup proof in my opinion, and Seattle has the 2nd highest implied team total on the slate this week with 29.75. In terms of DK Metcalf as the secondary piece of this stack, he has no game with under 6 targets this season, and he's shown 10 plus target upside coming off of the Week 5 performance against Minnesota where he had 11 targets, and he currently leads Seattle with 39 targets on the year. Despite Tyler Lockett having an absolute blow-up game where he scored 3 touchdowns against Dallas, Metcalf still leads Seattle in receiving scores. He's averaging a full touchdown per game, and while I do believe that the term grown-ass man has become a little played out on fantasy Twitter, maybe a little bit overused, I don't know that any player in the entire league is more deserving of the title of grown-ass man than DK Metcalf is, and I can tell you right now that the aging Patrick Peterson for the Cardinals is not looking forward to seeing DK Metcalf lined up across from him this week. Stack number 3, Aaron Rodgers to Devontae Adams. This stack is a high-cost stack worth paying the price for, and I think it makes a ton of sense for DFS on multiple levels. For one, the Packers are the only team with an implied team total above 30 right now, sitting at 30.5, and this game has the highest total of the week, currently set at 57.5. It's already been bet up a full 1.5, so we've already got the Vegas stamp of approval. Secondly, Aaron Jones is sure to be one of the most popular, highly chalky options on the slate, and building a roster with the intent to capitalize on Davante Adams' ceiling is natural leverage, as it would be difficult for both players to hit their respective ceilings in the same week. More receiving touchdowns for Adams means less rushing touchdowns for Jones. And finally, I think that we're getting these players in bounce back spots. Now, due to the matchup and the overall increased sharpness of the DFS community as of late, this stack is not going to come off as sneaky. Maybe in the old days, DFS players would have been less likely to jump back on an expensive stack like this after it failed last week. I do not think that that will be the case. However, just in case any of the viewers of this video were nervous about the thought of a Green Bay Packers stack after Tampa Bay held them without a score for the final 3 quarters of last week's game, my message to you would be don't be afraid. No fear. Tampa has an elite defense. The Texans do not. Quite the opposite, in fact. As far as Adams goes, he had an unimpressive 6 for 61 box score in his return to the field, but his usage was encouraging. He played on 83% of the snaps after missing multiple weeks, and he saw his usual allotment of double-digit targets, having 10. The Texans' offense is good enough that this game should be, close and competitive. I think that Will Fuller is a great bring back for full-on game stacks, but all in all, I'm locking and loading the Packers' passing attack in DFS tournaments for Week 7. Stack number 4 this week is going to be another bounce back. It's one that was featured on last week's video, and I'm not going to lie, it kind of busted, but I am willing to go back to it, and that's going to be Matthew Stafford to Kenny Golladay. Last week, the Lions were in a great spot facing Jacksonville, but this matchup is arguably even better. The Falcons are a bottom 5 team against opposing wide receivers, as was evident by their willingness to, just mercilessly allow Justin Jefferson to trample over them for 160 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. Kenny Golladay last week had an efficient game, but he only had 4 receptions. I mean, he did manage to convert that into over 100 yards, but Kenny G failed to find the end zone last week for the first time in any of his 3 2020 games. I think Galladay's inability to find the end zone last week was a result of the same thing that caused Stafford to bust, and that was just that even though the Lions put up 34 points, a lot of that came on the ground. DeAndre Swift had 2 rushing touchdowns, Adrian Peterson had a rushing touchdown, and Detroit was just well in control of this game from start to finish. If there's one thing you could point to about the Falcons defense that they've done well in 2020, it would be limiting rushing touchdowns. They're tied for 5th in the league in terms of least amount of rushing touchdowns allowed per game to opposing backs. I think that the Lions will lean on Stafford to score points in this game, which currently has a total of 55.5. They're 2-point underdogs, so they're expected to be trailing, expected to be passing. And we also get the bonus, narrative of Stafford returning to Georgia. Wheels up for Detroit in Week 7. All right, and finally, the last stack that I'm going to cover in this week's video is one that I'm not too sure people will be doing jumping jacks of joy for to land on their teams, but it's going to be Josh Allen to Stephon Diggs, going up against this embarrassingly bad, talent-poor Jets team. It's just an absolute vibe in Week 7. After 2 disappointing offensive efforts, this is a get-right spot for the Bills, and while I talked about the Green Bay Packers stack being a non-sneaky spot to buy the bounce back, I think the Bills will be a little bit more under the radar this week. For one, this game doesn't have an enticing total. It opened at 46, and it's actually been bet down to 45, good for second lowest on the slate. And people will see that, then they'll think about Josh Allen struggling in prime time in back-to-back weeks, and then recency bias is just going to prevent them from going heavy on Buffalo. Not me, because despite the game having a low total, the Bills still have a 29.25 implied team total, 4th highest on the slate, and you don't have to stretch your imagination to see Josh Allen finding success here. You can just scroll through his game log. This game already happened once this year. It was the Week 1 matchup between the Bills and the Jets. Allen had 46 pass attempts. He had the most rushing attempts he's had this season, 14, threw for over 300 yards passing with 2 touchdowns, added 57 yards on the ground and another score for over 30 fantasy points. And then when it comes to Steph Diggs, his impact on this offense is clear as day. He's averaging nearly 10 targets per game, and he's posted over 100 yards in 3 out of the 6 games so far. Diggs should continue to grow more and more comfortable as his chemistry with Allen develops. In conclusion, I just love this spot for Buffalo this week. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Like I said, it helps out a ton. And if you want a free chance to win a $5.50 ticket to a drafters contest of your choice, all you have to do is head over to their Twitter, retweet their most recent tweet, and then drop your drafters username in the comment section below. I will select one random person on next Thursday's video to receive that ticket. And yeah, guys, thank you for watching. Like I said, drop a comment. If one of these stacks was too low on the list, or I missed a stack entirely, I mean, didn't have New Orleans on there, no Brees to Thomas, no Matt Ryan to Calvin, or Julio. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely some stacks that could be on this list. Let me know if one of them should be on the list. Thank you guys for watching, though. I do appreciate it, and I will talk to you again next Thursday.